to ask our panel members to introduce themselves. I'm Carol Leeming. I'm a poet. I'm a courier poet. I'm a playwright, and I write short stories, and I also write journalistic articles for magazines. That's enough about me. Let's move on to our wonderful panel members. So if I can start with you, Shreya.
Hi, yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to reel off a bit of a list only because I think it's pertinent to what we'll be discussing. So I'm
Okay,
Freya Handley.
that's fine.
I've written 3 books for HarperCollins. I am a columnist of almost 30 years now. So I've written for CNN, The Guardian, National Geographic, and many more, Times of India, and so on. I'm a playwright. I'm currently working on a theatrical piece that also has Hanif Qureshi writing for a London theatre. I'm a librettist for the Welsh National Opera. I'm told I'm the first South Asian woman to have written an international opera. I'm a published poet, short story writer, travel writer, illustrator. I've written for TV and directed for it. I've made music videos for MTV, and I'm a creative writing teacher. The whole point of saying all this is to say that, I think the key to it, as we'll talk about as we go along, is to diversify.
Absolutely.
So
thank you. That was really rich. Thank you so much. And we'll move to our next panelist, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Graves. I'm a freelance writer. I kind of started off as a poet, and I did a lot of performance poetry, which I still do every now and again. I've written 3 poetry collections, but really, kind of underlining Shreya's point, really, I write in lots of different forms, and I guess 99% of my writing now is basically writing about films and horror films specifically. So I write a lot for Scream magazine, and I write for things like Diabolique magazine, We Belong Dead. I also write for lots of Blu-ray companies, so people into Blu-rays, sort of boutique Blu-ray labels. I write a lot of the booklets that accompany those sort of releases. I just feel really lucky because I think, I'm sure we'll get into this, but in terms of what's happened in terms of COVID, it's in some ways it's not really affected my what I do. 90% of what I do is sitting at home in front of a laptop. So it's been So that's me. That's what lots of things.
I think it's wonderful the way Writing East Midlands has brought all of us together, because I think there's a lot of similarities in that we have diversified in terms of our writing. I mean, I share with both of you some of those projects in terms of writing, and it just seems to be the way that things are going at the moment, whether it's radio, whether it's on the stage, whether it's magazines, articles, screenwriting, which I also do. I think all 3 of us basically are good examples of having a wide range of different types of writing that we're doing and that we're generating income from. So thank you, both of you, for that. So I'm keen for us to get straight in, really. And one of the things I think we can kick off with is what Andrew highlighted, which is, how have things affected our usual sources of income? How's that changed in terms of the lockdown? Are we discovering new sources of income, and how are you selling and promoting yourself in terms of your work? So, and if there's any tips that you've got on approaching potential buyers of your work, or indeed collaborators, in terms of discussing paid work. Whoever wants to jump in on that.
Shall I just jump in and introduce myself? Is that all right before we go any further?
Yes, sorry.
On a way.
Dan,
No problem at all. No problem at all. No,
Just
I'll do it
quickly,
now. It's not a
thank
problem
you.
at all. I was thinking about,
Yes,
sort of, building your brand and being cheeky yet respectful of
yes,
that to get new opportunities. I'll just introduce myself very quickly with my unofficial conference hat on. So my name is Dan Webber. I'm an
yes.
LGBTQ plus poet, producer, and events coordinator based in Derby. I've been working in the arts for the last 16 years. Goodness, where to start? I was named Best Promoter for Leicester Comedy Festival 2020 for my work with Furthest from the Sea, and my first one-person show, Genre Fluid, was named Best Solo Show at Morecambe Fringe Festival 2020. Previously had work commissioned for Coventry Pride, Derby Fest Day, and Shout Festival Birmingham, and I've worked with a lot of kind of creative and commercial organisations across the Midlands. That's my unofficial conference hat on. Thank you.
Thank you. So how is COVID affecting us in terms of, existing work, trying to find new work, collaborations? How are you selling yourself in this pandemic time that we're in?
Do you want me to go
Freya?
first?
Yes, please, jump in.
It was just at the beginning when lockdown first happened, and because I was working such a lot with theatres this year and the last, it was a bit worrying, because of course theatres had to shut down. But the amazing thing and the resilient thing about theatres and creative organizations and creative people was that we kind of bounced back and rechanneled things. So the theatre started putting things online, live streaming or making films, which was fantastic. So although my opera premiere, which was supposed to happen last year, is probably going to happen this year, maybe not, maybe it'll be next year. But in the meantime, we've done other operatic work. We've put it on screen, and it's all it's opened up, even as doors have shut. What's happened with lockdown is it's opened up other possibilities. We're now, all of us, getting comfortable with being online. We're putting everything online, on screen. So in the end, creative opportunities did not dry up. I found that they kept coming in, just in a modified form. And that was great, opportunities to grow.
Excellent. So there's kind of a mixed thing there. So it's kind of like, as some doors close, there are these new ones, and we're all getting used to the new normal of being on this screen. Andrew, how's it been for you?
It's I mean, I think when this hit, I mean, we all went into, it threw us all a wobbly, didn't it? I mean, we didn't know, none of us as kind of was expecting this. None of us knew how to deal with this. Now, in terms of my work as a writer, I guess before COVID, I was lucky that I was able to concentrate a lot of what I did in terms of poetry, and I was kind of making a living at that, which is fairly unusual, I think, But at the same time, I've never been one to kind of. I'm very greedy. I don't like to sort of, this is the only thing I do. So I've always been into films. I've always been absolutely passionate about films. I've always worked closely, well, for the last sort of 8 or 9 years, I've worked fairly closely with a Broadway cinema in Nottingham, where I've been presenting talks and introducing films and interviewing people like Paddy Considine, Ken Loach, and all this kind of stuff. So I've always had that side. And when COVID hit, obviously I couldn't go into schools, I couldn't do any of the workshops I was doing. So it was really about redressing and saying, well, but I've got this side. That can be the 99% of what I do now. So it took a few months to adjust, but I soon found I was picking up work. So I was able to finish the book I'd started writing last year about Alice Lowe's Revenge, which is a British horror film. So that's kind of coming out soon. I got another book deal on the back of that. I've written. I was trying to work it out. I think I've written about 15 magazine articles in the last year and about 16 Blu-ray booklets in the last year. So for me, it's been a really, and I don't mean to sound this to belittle it. I know it's been a terrible situation. Lots of people have suffered through this. I'm not belittling that, but for me, in terms of my writing, I've actually been able to shift quite positively into doing something I enjoyed, but now is kind of a much bigger part of my income now, and I feel much better for it, you know. And I guess another thing I would say is
Yes.
that, you know, you get this kind of occasionally, you know, before this, I was getting this kind of imposter syndrome, where because you
Yeah.
know you rely on funding and other you know workshops and things like that, which is all great, it's all fantastic, but I think this year more than any, I've been able to make money purely through writing, which
Yes.
you know
Yes.
actually, and I guess with film writing as well, whereas poetry you have to be a kind of social sort of media purveyor really,
Mm.
whereas film writing you can be a bit more anonymous, your name's there, but it's the
Yes.
writing, you are judged merely on the writing, and
Yes.
I think it's really freeing for me.
Yeah. So Dan, did you want to add something on this topic before we move on?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I just to add to what the rest of the panel has said. I think obviously, at the start of lockdown, goodness, before this happened, 99% of my income was in events. As Shreya said, I was working producing events. I was working for fringe festivals, different organisations. I was actually on tour. I had 7 tour dates left of a tour we started in 2019 of my one-person show, Genre Fluid, and then of course almost overnight everything kind of stopped. And I think one of the only good things that's come out of this for me is, I've managed to learn a whole new skill set, because we have been sat in front of computers and Zoom screens, as we said, for near enough 12 months now. But also, I've been able to reach new audiences, because I started obviously putting work online, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about how important of making work accessible is. But, for last year, for instance, I performed at the Hollywood Fringe Festival, which was amazing, which I did from this very room using, a boom mic and a decent light. But that never would have happened without COVID-19.
No.
So as awful as it has been, and still is for a lot of people, self included, it has made a massive difference to me, because it's really made me realize, as we'll talk about I'm sure later, just how to diversify those skills, and to kind of say, oh no, I can do that for you, because I've done this. And it's realizing that the skills you had, especially in promoting yourself and promoting work in the physical realm, to an extent is quite easy to shift over to a digital platform or a digital way of doing things.
So before we move on, just to summarize on that, really, I think we've all shared a very similar experience, and it's certainly my own experience. In the last year or so, I have been commissioned twice for 2 publications, one non-fiction, one for a poetry collection, Poetry in COVID. And then on top of that, I've had new opportunities that have never presented themselves before. People from London calling me up to do dramaturgy. And then there's the whole thing about going online and learning new skills and diversifying and making new contacts and new audiences. So, I'm going to say it is that mixed thing during the pandemic, where things have kind of flopped off, but something new has come up. And at the same time, there's this continuum where we're learning new skills. We're in the new normal, the brave new world of being online and putting work online. I've certainly done poetry performances online that have been promoted by various poetry promotions. And at the same time, I have been actually working on a major collection of poetry to be published, hopefully later this year. So I think I can summarize, we've all had this thing where we're actually, things have locked down on one side, but we've had new opportunities. We're using the core skills of our writing and using them in different ways, and opening up new windows to new opportunities. So I'm going to move on from that and ask the question, where, and I'm sure people would want to know this, where do we get our opportunities from? Or how do you find your opportunities? And also, how is your work being sold, if you publish things, or even comment on selling your work online, if that's relevant. But if we could take firstly, where do you find your opportunities? Anybody who wants to jump in on that? How do you get your work?
Well, in terms of me this year, I mean, in terms of writing magazines and Blu-ray stuff like, and I mean, I mean, obviously you've got to build up a bank of experience, but I can't emphasize enough how good you need to be at pitching. And I think this is not something that is necessarily talked about enough. You know, you have to
Yes.
be brilliant at pitching ideas. You have to, you know, it sounds really obvious, but you really do. It's a separate skill in itself. You know, you can get over an email, and you know, it is a lot of emailing, and you know, a lot of stuff about writing. Being a writer is admin. You know, I hate to
Yes.
break
Yeah.
it, but I'm being disciplined. You know, I'm sure I'm teaching you to grandma to suck eggs here, but it is. You know, I get up. I'm in front of my laptop at 8 o'clock every morning, and I work.
Wow.
You know, I don't mean that in burning mortar flesh sense, but I just do. That's how I like to do it. I do 8 till 5 every day, and I write, and you know, and I don't stop until I've got my 1,000, 2,000 words or whatever that I'm doing that day. I do regularly do 2-3 magazine articles a week. So,
thank you, Shreya.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with Andrew about pitching. Pitching's important. Promotion, sadly, is important. But the other thing is opportunities lead to opportunities. And the more you say yes to, the more you say yes to, the more challenges you're willing to take on. For example, I mean, the way the opera came to me, I am a journalist of many years, a columnist, a TV journalist and director. And I'd written at that point my first book with HarperCollins, which was a memoir meets journalism about, you know, about feminism and gender and sexuality. So nothing at all to do with opera. But I do a lot of travel writing as well. They read that, they came to me and they said, and I couldn't believe it, I mean, it was out of the blue, and they said, would you like to write an opera with us? And I could have balked at that point. I could have been worried that, you know what, I've barely even been to opera. But I thought, hey, you know what? You know, I come from a background of Bollywood and so on. So opera is just another form of musical theater. I can do this. I've always been told I have rhythm in my writing. These are transferable skills. So I guess my thing is to say that if you love writing, if you've built a solid bit of work around it, and you're passionate, you're disciplined, you're putting your all into it, don't say no to anything. Let it, whatever comes to you, or whether you go out and pitch for it, pitch for everything you think you'd like to as well. Don't say no, have faith in yourself. Opportunities invariably lead to opportunities.
That is so very true. Fantastic. Dan, what's your take
again,
on
just to echo what's been said. In terms of myself, obviously, I'm going to kind of break this down to two. Firstly, I am signed up to a lot of kind of art jobs, emails, notifications. All the organizations I want to work with or want to try and get involved with, I follow on social media, and I'm sure we'll talk about social media later on. But a part of it for me is just that. I mean, goodness, I did some work recently with Mansfield Palace Theatre, and one of the reasons I was aware of the opportunity was because when they announced their new sort of creative director of the theatre, I went and followed her on Twitter, not in a stalky way, but just a way to say, right, I'm really keen to get involved. I don't know how to do this yet, but I know this is someone who will be sharing opportunities of how to get involved with this space. And as the other panelists touch upon, it's also, you know, it's that network of people, it's being seen. You know, I'll give an example, and I appreciate not everyone's in a position to do this, but when I started doing this, I offered my time for 4 days on an organization in Derby, literally, as bad as it sounds, holding cameras, making tea, you know, a runner job on a digital theatre project, and just to be seen, to be working with that company. And then when you approach other people, you say, actually, I've just finished doing this. The more you can kind of, and as we've touched on, it is the pitch, it is how you promote yourself, but the more you can kind of build up and bank these little projects or these little things, it just, you know, when you do approach the large organizations, rather than just saying, hello, I'd love to get involved cold, you're saying, I'd love to get involved and I've just done X, Y, Z, A, B, C. It shows that other people have trusted you in similar roles.
Yes. Well, I think I'm going to pull some of those things together and sort of just infuse on my own thinking about it. So there's something there about opportunities do lead to other opportunities, and there's something there about coming out of your comfort zone. And what I would want to encourage people is that if you can write, you can write fiction, you can write poetry, you can write drama, you can also write a review, you can write for a website. So you can just apply that core skill of writing into different contexts. And what you can also do is engage with the idea of lifelong learning, which is part of my journey. I've just done workshops, I've continued to develop my writing skill set, if you will. So, you know, I think that's important. Also linked to that is building up your literary CV. And once you've done one piece of work, make sure that you update your CV and everybody knows that you've done that and how successful you've been at it. And then I think this is key. This is a business term. What is your unique selling point? What makes you different to other writers? What is it about your voice? What is it about the style that you write in? What is it, like Andrew? What's your interest? So, you know, he's already talked about a strong interest in film. Shreya has gone from travel to getting involved in musical theatre and optics. And Dan has been, you know, going across the Atlantic, extending his engagement and his reach. So learning about pitching, learning about promoting yourself, learning how to sell yourself, and to understand what is it that makes you the writer that you are. You know, we learn about identity and voice and all those things, but also your interests. And in my own case as well, once you start to build things up, will start coming to you, which is a wonderful thing. I think that's what Shreya was saying, that you can start getting opportunities happening because you did something else. Opportunities lead to other opportunities. So I think that was a really useful sort of exploration really about that. And I just want to touch a little bit on promotional writing, and then I want to move on maybe talking about things like writing commissions or creative commissions and opportunities. So in terms of promotional writing, writing for print or digital media or monetizing blogs and or review sites, just if we go around and just talk about any experience with that or any thoughts and comments on that. Who wants to jump in on that? Who's doing any writing then, promotional writing for print or digital media, or have got blogs going on or monetizing blogs, or as Andrew, he's been doing reviews? Any further thoughts and comments on that specific type of writing, promotional writing?
Yeah, I don't do, I think what you technically classify as promotional writing, but I do lots of columns for newspapers and magazines, and
columns, yeah.
it's a,
that's right.
Yeah, it's a brilliant way to bolster earning as well as your range and grow your skills, because you can actually take whatever, for example, if you see yourself as primarily a fiction writer, you can take the interests, the subject areas that you work on in fiction and take it across and write just as interesting a piece of creative nonfiction that you can then, you know, either look around to pitch to various magazines and organizations, or you can already have done your research. You know which magazines you want to send it out to. You tailor it to how they like to have things, you know, the word limit, the kind of angle, the pitch. You pitch it and you send it across. Anything that you're passionate about, whether it's you're writing about mental health or whatever it is, feminism, you know, any real world issue that goes into your fiction writing, because of course they do, can work just as well for columns, for newspapers, for magazines, for websites. So our skills are so transferable, and that's what I've learned. I've learned it. It's been a learning curve, and it's worth anybody doing that. And you can do that right from the start. You know, you don't already have to have the experience and networking going on. You could start at the beginning by diversifying straight away.
I think it's I think in terms of the promotional side of it, yeah, the promotional side of it, I think I don't necessarily. I'm not great at writing sort of promotional pieces in that sense, but I do, I write a lot for magazines, and I think when you, as a poet, you're kind of on your own. You've got to do a certain degree of social media, and that's up to you how you kind of handle that. But I think when you're writing for like magazines, like so to give an example, I did I've written a number of pieces for Screen magazine recently, and but one of the latest ones I wrote a retrospective on an American werewolf in London, which is 40 years old this year. It's and but because that was a cover story for a magazine that obviously goes out in WH Smith or wherever, you can piggyback that promotion because you're part of it, and it saves you a lot of work because you can just help on Twitter to that. The magazine kind of does the promotion for you. So it's a kind of a cop out, but I prefer kind of piggybacking on that. And I mean, I've done self promotion obviously in terms of doing.
Yeah, I think the important point is there's different routes up the mountain. There's different methodologies. What's your take on this, Dan?
Yeah, I was just thinking. So obviously, my kind of background in the more kind of creative side as opposed to sort of commercial writing. But I think the closest I've got is when I was kind of starting out, I was a theatre maker. I was going to be, I was very keen to and I'm still a theatre maker now, but not as directly. And I applied to write reviews for an online blog reviewing theatre in the Midlands. And before I made that application, I just created a really simple little blog page online and started writing 2 or 3 reviews of things I'd seen previously. So rather than just saying, hello, I'd be interested in getting involved, again, it's that thing of saying, I'd like to write reviews for you. Please see attached, or here's the link to my blog, or here's 3 examples of reviews I've written previously. So you are showing the person, it's great to make that connection. It's great to get involved. It's great to take that step and make that email or make that phone call or shake that hand at that conference when we're allowed to, of course. But I think if you've got that, impetus and that kind of, I've done this already, let's have a chat, I guess it comes across better. Goodness, in my kind of work programming and producing, it's always great to see, a press pack or a marketing pack, and yes, they are a lot of work, I appreciate, but just showing someone's just gone that extra step to go, here's what I want to talk to you about.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I just think before we move on, sorry, Shreya, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it might be slightly tangential. It kind of touches upon the areas. I was just going to say, if you're not comfortable with self-promotion, many of us are not, I'm not, but just keeping your name in the newspapers and magazines by writing for them is a brilliant way to keep that recognizability going. People will recognize your name. And then if you use social media, even just put your articles out there, nothing else, just put your articles out there. It leads to many further opportunities. It did for me. It did for me. That's how CNN came calling for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I think that's great. I think by sharing our personal experience, it's going to help people. So I'm going to say now, before we move on, that I was this person living in Leicester in the East Midlands and not getting anywhere fast some years ago in terms of trying to be established as a writer. But I want to pick up what Dan said. I did actually start a blog, and that was really important, and I actually got a lot of interest in that blog, and that blog led to other opportunities. And also, there may be opportunities that you can pitch yourself for wherever you live in terms of just doing, I remember I started off doing like single paragraph reviews of arts events and things like that. And then you get to a point where someone asks you to write an article or write something for a website. So it's about taking those small steps. It's about maybe starting a blog to actually showcase you and your writing. And it could be writing about writing, could be writing about themes and topics that you're really interested in or have a passion for. But I think it came up as well, the importance of networking. Well, we've got networking face to face, like if you attend a conference and you sort of network. But the biggest networking for me that's worked for me is online networking. So whether that's Facebook, Twitter, or in fact something like LinkedIn, I've been able to make contacts through those routes. And also what Shreya was saying about just having an online presence on Twitter, on Facebook, having a blog, so people kind of, you get your head above the parapet and people get to know you're somebody who writes, and you can create more opportunities for yourself that way. So those are things to think about, especially if someone's on this session thinking, where do I start with this? And I'm not a great seller of myself, but you can write. The key thing is, if you can write, it's about pushing that writing out and getting an online presence and just making people more aware of who you are. And I want to say as well, for a long time I was unpublished, and getting published, as we know, is not easy. But when you go online, that's a kind of publishing. That is a kind of publishing. So trying to get stuff, work online, so people can see you are seriously a writer is one of the ways forward that I want to highlight. So I'd like to move on now to ask panel members what they think about and what their thoughts and experiences are about things like finding writing competitions, or indeed getting creative commissions and actually getting commissions and writing opportunities. Whoever wants to come in on that. Come on, jump in.
Okay, I'll jump in because I have, I'll jump in on that. So as I mentioned earlier, I've got 2 commissions on the go, one for Melbourne Arts Festival, Arts Melbourne and the National Forest, and another one for the Brewhouse Arts Centre in Burton, which is producing the poetry. And I've been commissioned 3 times in the past, once for Derby Fest Day, once for Coventry Pride, and once for the Shout Festival Birmingham. I appreciate that didn't happen overnight. I've been doing this, I've been in the arts 16 years. I've been writing, I hate the word professionally, what the hell that means. I've been writing seriously and trying to push myself for about 6. This has not happened overnight, but all the commissions I applied for. And it goes back to looking for opportunities, following those opportunities. Not everyone, goodness, I say I've got, 3 last year. I can tell you about half a dozen, if not more, I didn't get. But it is just about being aware of when these commissions are open, who is offering commissions. We talked last night in the elevator pitch sessions, which were slightly different than this, granted, but we talked to a number of the delegates about, if you're looking to reach a certain publisher or have your work seen, do you know when their submission window opens? Do you know what they expect from you as a writer? If you want to work with Festival A, when does that festival open for bookings, or when do they start their commission work? I'm a big believer that if normally that's online, because if they're actively trying to find people to commission, they'll be shouting from the rooftops. And even if you don't get that commission, it's good practice to put the commission in, but also it gets you on that radar. It gets you, if you're unsuccessful, it still goes, good name, and then next time you apply, they'll go, oh, there's that name again. It shows commitment, it shows wanting to get involved, and the more you can apply for, it's like job interviews, the more interviews you can have, the better you become at them, hopefully. Yeah,
you build up those skills. Shreya?
Yeah, I was just going to say, absolutely true what Dan's saying. Commissions, I work nowadays, I've been in this a long time, so it's probably 95% commissioned. Very occasionally I will pitch. And earlier on, there'd be more pitches and fewer commissions. As you go along, the commissions grow. But what we don't talk about are the unofficial pitches. So although I don't pitch officially that much anymore because commissions come to me, they won't come to you either if you're not also constantly talking to people about your ideas, what you're enthused about, what's really, blowing your mind about something that's out there. So, while, for example, so I've got this new commission from a London theatre that I'm really excited about, and it is a commission, it came to me. However, I had a conversation with their director one day a long time ago about, we had a conversation, we were both working for opera, we were talking about the things we were passionate about, and he remembered, and I told him about some of my ideas, and then he remembered, and when he had a commission to offer me, he came to me. So and that could be called networking, or that could be called an informal pitch. But the point is, you're building those relationships, and you're building building that scenario in which they will come to you.
Yeah.
So
Andrew.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree with I would agree with what Shreya is saying there. I think for me, it's a lot of It's about 50-50 in terms of like me actively seeking pitching and getting commissions. So in terms of the magazine work and Blu-ray stuff, you know, I've spent a lot of time in the last year sort of chasing up Blu-ray companies and getting my name known and building up a CV with that, which I have done now, which leads to them approaching me now. So yeah, but I think again with the magazine stuff, a lot of time, like I say, it's 50-50. So sometimes I will contact a specific magazine with an official pitch, and they will either take it or not. But a lot of the time they will just contact me out of the blue and say, do you want to write about this? And also there's those kind of more unofficial pitches where once you've established that contact, they will commission you to write a piece. But as they commission you to write that piece, it's like, yeah, great, I'll do that. But have you thought about this as well?
Yeah.
I could do really good on this, and you know, it goes from there. And I think I know because I know I've been thinking around the questions and stuff, and I know a lot of people are saying how do you start scratch? And
I know, and I think
there are. I mean, for me, growing up in Nottingham, Left Lion was always a thing, and Left Lion was brilliant.
Left Lion.
They don't pay, but if you can get a couple of features produced in that's your first published work. The first thing I ever had published was in Left Lion.
Yeah.
You know, and you go from there.
I think
you know, this idea of like I'm not published, and people, that can be seen as like a really negative thing. But get published then. I would argue it's not that hard to get published.
Get published
initially.
Okay, I think that's really important, and I'm going to follow on from that before we move on. So for me, I found it very difficult to get published, but I did all that sort of stuff, blogging, and I started to get magazine articles and that sort. But in terms of the poetry and playwriting, controversially, I don't do competitions. So I'll just get that out there. But what I did do was blogging. What I did do was you know, networking and getting in social media. And what I also did was I actually believed in my writing, and I actually started off self-publishing a debut chapbook. And so, you know, if no one's going to publish you, do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your writing, your voice, your identity? And the key question why I self-published was I had this question: who is my audience? Who is willing to pay for my writing? And by self-publishing and selling out my first edition of my debut chapbook, I answered that question, and I could build up a mailing list, and I had a profile of who is interested in my writing. So I think there's some good ideas there, lots of ideas about having an online presence, blogging, pitching, following your passion, talking to people, going for things, going outside your comfort zone, going for submissions and competitions. Maybe I should do a competition, I don't know. But, you know, trying all these different things and not just thinking, well, I'm not published, and that becomes a sort of big block in your head. Actually, as I said before, if you publish a poem, a short story online, that's classed as being published today. So, you know, it's another step to then maybe get into a local arts or literary magazine, and to just take those building block steps. Now, I'd quite like to move on to, and just do remember as well, as a writer, you could be writing lyrics, you could be writing songs with local musicians. I mean, Shreya's story and journey has been very insightful in terms of actually the full transferability of having creative writing skills. If you're a poet, you could be writing songs. I do that. I write in music, but I also write poetry and plays. So I'm going to move on now, and I'm going to pull these two things together. Is how do you, let's look at managing expectations and actually charging for your writing. And I'd ask the panel to think about that. And also tied into what we were saying as well, and what I was saying earlier about your voice, what's your unique, your USP, your brand awareness and building your brand as a writer. So could I have some thoughts on those things? So it's about, how managing expectations and this thorny thing of charging for your writing. How do people go about that? We're getting to the money
You
part
can-
now. We're getting
okay,
to the
I
money
can.
part.
Go on.
I can go first, or is Dan going first? I
Yeah,
think we'll
you
all
go first.
say
No,
similar things.
by all means.
I think we'll all say similar things in terms of managing expectation, that there are very few writers in the world who get rich. So I think if you hope to get rich, writing isn't the thing that will get you there. But having said that, if you diversify your writing enough and you start writing for television and various other things, you know, that can allow you to get into those more lucrative industries, that too can happen. However, you can, I don't want to be a dampener on it, but it is possible to make a living. It's possible to make a reasonable living out of writing. And again, for me, and this also links into Carol's question about USP. What is my USP? What is it that allows me now to make that reasonable living? And that is range. I believe that, although, you know, obviously it's not just about dabbling in everything, it's about building a solid reputation in everything. But the fact that so not a case of jack of all trades, but you have a good solid thing there, you have talent, but that you believe is transferable, and you will give it a chance, and you will transfer it again and again and again. I call it my Madonna principle. So Madonna was all about reinvention, and is all about reinvention and promotion. So reinvention and versatility and diversifying is key to creating those earning opportunities. And not only is it about your own range, it's about the range of organizations you're willing to approach, willing to work with, and not just organizations, but also countries. Do not restrict yourself to a city, a country. There's a big world of publishing out there, a lot of it in English. The biggest English language book market in the world is India. So always remember that. Always remember that when you're writing. Do not set yourselves any boundaries of any kind. That would be my advice.
Thank you. Andrew, the money question.
Well, yeah, the money. I mean, everybody avoids the money thing, don't they? I mean, I'm always.
No, we're not avoiding it here.
Maybe I'm too candid about this, but I just, you know, I think the poetry world, performance poetry world. I mean, there's certain rates and things like that, but I think it tends to be much more varied. And you know, you might get 50 quid for a gig, or you might get paid £1,000 for a commission. You know, so it's very, very varied. The film writing stuff, I think, is much more consistent. So there are actual industry standards which you can either achieve, you know, and which doesn't mean to say every single magazine pays those industry standards, because they don't. But then you make a judgment call: how many people are going to see this? Is it going to be good for me? But you know, your industry standard is your 10p a word or whatever. It's you know, it's that. But so it's up to you whether you say it's more consistent in magazine writing and Blu-ray companies and things like that than it is in poetry. But
yes,
I've never had a problem monetizing. I'm not shy about people paying for my work. I've earned this. I've been doing this. I've been working for this for 12 years. So you know, pay me.
Yes. Dan.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Andrew said, it's something I always really struggled with, and I think it's fair to say, even now, I'm still a bit. I hate discussing money. It's the bane of my life, but I understand it's very important, as it should be. And to talk about what Andrew touched upon, in poetry especially, there are workshops, there are great organisations who will send you fair rates of pay or their suggested pay for workshops or performances. For me personally, and this comes from my kind of theatre work, my kind of my non-writing work in a way, daily rate, but it's a flexible daily rate. So it's not set in stone. And I will also kind of talk, okay, if that's not possible, let's talk about it. If I'm really passionate about doing something and I can see potential or I want to get involved, it's not a no, thank you very much, go away. It's a, okay, let's have a conversation about how this works. I'm thinking about poetry, goodness. I have shamefully in some cases done the kind of pay my train fare, put me up for the night, because that's more important to me than not 50 quid, because that's unfair. I would rather do the gig and have my train fare covered than not be able to do the gig and have, you know,
Yeah.
the fee, if you like.
Yeah.
But also, and this
Yeah,
ties back to what we talked about earlier. With me, I'm very lucky because I have got a book published, as we talked about earlier, and so there is a chance for extra income, you know, and that's why I'm so keen to do the gig, because talking about, I did a performance at the start of the year over Zoom, and I sold 10 books on the back of it, which was incredible.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't happen very often, but it's great. So if you have got something, you know, in terms of networking or something to sell, it does make it easier to say, okay, you know what, right, yeah, I'll do that gig because this might happen, or that person's going to be there and I want to meet that person. One of my first ever open mics in London was organised by the LGBTQ+ Poet Laureate at the time, and I went down to that gig, performed on the open mic so I could go to meet you. We started a conversation. It kept over email, and then she invited me back the year after to perform as a headliner for that very night. So it was worth, you know, I could justify that, saying, you know what, worth that to hopefully get this.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And there's a range of experience and points there. And I think I'll just pull those together and sort of infuse again a bit of my own experience. There's two things. In terms of managing the expectations in my own journey, part of that was getting really robust feedback on my work from peers and from colleagues in universities. If you've got any, when we talked earlier about what is your USP, what is your voice, what is your identity, you need to establish that. Then there's actually lots of information. If you're writing plays, if you're writing poetry, if you're writing librettos, whatever it is, there's laid down rates of pay, professional rates that you can use as your as your guideline, as your yardstick, and to measure yourself against that. Then there's the sort of thing that Dan was talking about, which I engaged in slightly differently. So publishing a chapbook, selling it directly to people who come to live events. You know, I've sold 40 books at one live event, for example. You know, because I took the view that I didn't want to go to a major poetry publisher, wait 2 years to be published, and sell I don't know how many books. I actually wanted to know who my audience was and engage directly with that audience. So that's one of the things. So what I would say before we move on to our final topic is that know your voice, know your value, know the rates, the professional rates of pay for that particular style, genre, context of writing. But do not sell yourself short. There is a tendency in terms of, you know, when I talk to writers, to sell themselves short, particularly if they haven't been published as yet. But we talked earlier about, you know, being publishing online and getting blogs. But do get independent, objective feedback on your writing, because you'll probably get a boost, because I find writers are always doing their own writing down generally. So I think there's a couple of pointers there that we've had. So I'm conscious of time. I'd like to actually move on now, and we touched on this earlier, you know, and it links to this whole idea of if you're going to build a brand awareness, then that brand awareness is something you need to build online. The importance finally of having that presence on social media and say having a blog or a website. Just briefly from all of you, a comment on that, please. And then what I'd quite like to do is open up questions from the audience. Being online.
Being online. Yeah, I found it, although I'm not the greatest online, I'm probably, you know, I'm not that generation really, but I found when after I came back from having my children and I was ready to go back into the world of writing, that being online helped immeasurably, because what happened was, so I got a few commissions from The Guardian, which was a great place, of course, to come back to and start again. But that in itself would not, I think, have led to so much as it did. But people urged me, get on Facebook, do this, do that. So I got on Facebook, started putting my writing out there. And those first few Guardian articles then got other people interested, not necessarily on my friends list even. You'd be surprised at what editors read, magazine editors and newspaper editors.
Oh, yes.
They are looking for good writers all the time. So out of the blue, CNN came to me on the back of my Guardian articles and asked me to write a column for them. As you go along, get your foot in the door. As you go along, opportunities happen, and you're able to ask for more money. You're able to ask, if you've started with no money, with a track record, you're able to ask for money. You're able to negotiate more. I've had 3 books with HarperCollins. The first one, you know, I didn't have any publishing record, so I was kind of starting at the ground level, and I got a reasonable an amount, let's say, but it wasn't huge. None of them have been huge. However, it was possible for me the next time around to negotiate more, and with the third to negotiate a little bit more. And that applies to any kind of writing. Get your foot in the door, and you'll be in a position to ask for more money the next time around.
Yeah, right. Briefly, Andrew and Dan.
Do you want to go, Andrew, or shall I?
You can go, Dan, you're right.
Yeah, so I should say also, as part of the megaphone sessions for the conference, we have got a megaphone session called On Demand, a beginner's guide to getting your work online, which does touch upon this with Robbie Owen and Eden MW. 3 very, 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 very quick stories. The first time I met a publisher this is about 5 or 6 years ago, it wasn't this blunt, but they basically said to me, how are you going to sell a book? You're not even on Twitter. Which was really difficult to hear, but I had to hear it. And similar story, once I was published, I went to a very, very famous bookshop. I'd still love to get my book there if they're listening. And I went through all the official channels, you know, submitted the book, did all the gubbins to get them to read it. And they said, thank you very much, Mr. Webber. We Googled you. We couldn't find a strong online presence, so we are going to pass. And that's not to put anybody off, but I think from those conversations, it made me really sort of, you know, pull up my boots and get a website, a basic website, but a website nonetheless, you know, to get my social media sorted. But also it's expectations, you know, it's some people, if it's good work, some publishers won't care. They'll do it regardless based on the strength of the work, as it should be to an extent. Other people, other publishers will expect to see, okay, what's your Twitter following? What's your social media reach? What reactions are you getting? You know, what have you done in terms of finding your audience, as we said? So if we say we're going to publish the thing, who's going to buy the thing or interact with the thing? So it is important, and I do think it is part of the job. As much as I hate it at times, it is part of the job.
It is. Andrew, briefly.
Online
presence.
I use Facebook, and I like Facebook because I think it enables me to say things fairly quickly and hopefully quite wittily sometimes as well. I also, I don't really do the blogging thing, but what I do is tying in with the film thing. I have a monthly podcast called Mondo Movie House, which is a cult film podcast. So that is, so rather than me writing a blog, we do a podcast and we put that out, and it feels like less hard work than writing a blog, to be honest. So that's out there, and that kind of, that's got work as well, you know, through that. So yes,
I think there's a couple of things I want to say before we go to our audience, which I'm really looking forward to. Is, you know, it has been mentioned, you know, Society of Authors, Writers Guilds. You know, there are professional bodies, NUJ, where you can get rates. The other thing is, I'm going to use the example of poetry. Practically impossible to get an agent. So if you accept that, you're going to, you're going, unless you're Simon Armitage or somebody, you're going to have to do a lot of legwork yourself online. Someone's commented that it's not always the case that if you have a strong online presence, you're going to sell. But what it will do, as Shreya has said, is generate interest. You know, it will generate interest, and as Dan, and that was underlined by Dan's comments, that if you haven't got a web presence, people might pass on a pitch or a piece of work. So online presence is really, really important. So I'd quite like to open up to questions now from the audience, because I thought we've had a really rich panel members sharing all their experiences and their tips and suggestions and talking about their journey. So can we have questions, please, from the audience?
Jason, could you just talk through some questions? Is that all right for us?
Yes, please.
No problem. So I'll just give me 1 second. I've just got to go scroll back up because there's been quite a lot actually. So it's been a great
while you're doing that, I've just seen a few things come up, like the bookseller. There is this thing about R&D. R&D is something that's been key to my journey. Doing the legwork of researching the sector, the context, the genres, the styles, the organisations, the publishing, who is it you want to engage with? And also, I didn't mention this earlier. I've, as part of my journey, also I've been involved in visiting guest lecturing on creative writing courses, and again that's been able to underline the point Shreya was making about you can take your core writing transferable skills and find other ways to generate income from it. So let's see if we've got some questions.
I'm starting at the bottom up, so I apologize. People have been waiting patiently. What is involved in self-publishing? That might be worth referring back to the talk that we previously had from, I can't remember his name, Ben.
Yes.
Jonathan White at Troubadour Self-Publishing.
Yeah, Troubadour, obviously, but there's lots of information online about the steps of self-publishing, and my advice would be to actually talk to someone who's done it, or find local writing groups where someone has actually done it and talk to them about their journey.
And just say that that video will be available as well when we finish the conference. Here's a good one.
Oh,
is
wonderful.
It about chasing the money or the craft or both? Writing to sell or selling to write? What's the motivation?
Yeah, I saw that and I thought it's both. I don't know what other panel members say. There's nothing to sell if it's not good writing and it's not passionate stuff that you're doing. Yes, Shreya?
Yeah, absolutely. The writing is essential, obviously. That is your calling card. You can't promote anything without the good writing. However, you can't be an ivory tower writer to that extent anymore. You can't live in an ivory tower. You've got to know what your audience wants as well, especially if you're going to, say, write columns on the side to bolster your fiction writing or whatever. Then you need to know what newspapers are looking for. What are the topics of the day? So research, as you said, is essential. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
I would say it's both as well. I think you've got to earn a living, but at the same time, if UKIP approaches me to write their manifesto, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, it's not going to be a fit for me, is it? But having said that, I have turned things down that haven't been that won't. It's not going to work for me because I'm not going to produce a good piece of writing from that. But at the same time, if it doesn't quite fit, what I always say is, if you commission me, then you know me, you know my writing, you know what I will write for you, so you will get what I give you. So if it doesn't quite fit, make it fit.
Yeah. I've turned down commissions to write plays about gun crime because I'm not interested in that topic.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll carry on. Yeah.
There's one that came up. There were a number of questions that were kind of related to, and you've been covering this a lot, so it's really just to ask if there's a kind of a summary. That lots of people say, I've not published, I haven't got a background, I haven't got that first step. I suppose I rephrase the question as, what would be a single piece of advice that each of you would offer to somebody just starting out on their writing journey, their writing career?
Just a quick responses from each of you on that.
Very quickly, publish. I was just going to say, publish any way you can, self-publish, find free magazines and stuff that have a respectable, obviously, that are respected. Build up your portfolio. That's the first step. Yeah. It is easier to get published these days, and the rest of it will happen. Opportunities will lead to opportunities, as I said earlier.
Okay, next.
Just write every day. Write every day as well. And it's not. Writing isn't magic. It's like car mechanics. If you work on cars every day, you're better at repairing cars after a couple of years, and it's the same with writing. And the writing will speak for itself. And there's lots of ways to get published. There's absolutely tons of ways to get published. You can get published if that's what you want to do. That's what you want.
Yeah, just keep going, keep writing. It will not happen overnight. Also read. One thing I'm very guilty about is not reading enough, which is always a bane of my life. If you want, like I said earlier, if you want to get published by organization A or magazine A, do the legwork, find out about them, find out when they are their submission windows are open. If again, I talk about Twitter a lot. Every kind of poetry zine I know on Twitter normally has on their bio or as part of their tweet, our submissions open on 20th of the 10th, or submissions are now open. It is just about, rather than sending, it's better to send out 10 really crafted submissions to people you want to work with than 110 basic bog standard, I want to do this, because a lot of the time, if you don't fit for that publisher or that magazine, they're just going to go, thank you very much, next. As Aki said in the session yesterday, we saw just how many submissions some of these places get. So it's rejection is a big part of it, I'm afraid, as we all know, I'm sure. But it is better just to tailor and focus, in my opinion, on the people you want to work with than just sending things out. You might as well be throwing it into the air out the window.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to repeat what I said, and it came up as well from the audience, that you should try and find writing groups or find credible literary peers, figures to kind of give you good feedback on your work. And then, as Shreya said, and Andrew, just keep writing, but also sharing your writing, whether it's a blog or through short story nights or poetry nights, whatever it is. Get people to see and hear you or read your writing. It won't happen if it's just in your computer at home. You've got to get out there, and there are opportunities now that weren't there 5-10 years ago to become self-published or published. Start with small steps, small magazines, find blogs, set up your own blog, do things like that. Just take that first step.